Welcome to MMA Live Before Lock right here on Awesemo.com as we are here for the next hour to break down UFC 258, which goes down tonight. Lock is at 6:15 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll be here till just before 5:30. Then myself and Pete will hop over in a Slack to any additional questions that you may have here. Start lining up those questions right there, whether it's in our premium Slack account or on YouTube, as we are here to break all this one down for you. Of course, as always, I'm joined by my friend, your friend, he's the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr. Pete, since we did the show on Thursday, we've had one change, and it is Bobby Green versus Jim Miller is off of this fight card. First off, give me your thoughts on this fight not being part of fight card. Obviously, it sounds like Bobby Green's going to be out for some time. You were reading the statement to me that he put out about the issues he's had, but this was definitely a fight that I was really looking at Jim Miller as an underdog.
Yeah, man, I'm disappointed that the fight fell through, and obviously, health and safety comes first. So I hope that what's ever wrong with Bobby Green, he mentioned something with his lungs and his kidneys. So I hope he gets checked out. I hope he gets cleared. I hope everything's okay. And, I'm excited to see Jim Miller get in the cage whenever that is, and looking forward to the return. But it was definitely a fight that I was interested in. I thought that Bobby Green was in a sneaky spot. I know that you like Jim Miller as an underdog. He's come through a lot in that spot. So, unfortunately, we'll have to pivot to other fighters in different salary ranges.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one fighter that everyone's going to turn to is Viana, which she is getting some good ownership based on our ownership projections. Should mention that on the site right now, free is MMA fighter projections, so you can check out those projections to help you build your lineups here for tonight's UFC 258. Of course, you got to hit that thumbs up button right here on YouTube. And if you are not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you know when a new show is live here on the channel. Following us will be NBA Deeper Dive. And right there you see on the screen, you see the MMA fighter projections that are free today to help you develop those lineups here for UFC 258. But this show is all about the questions. Let's get right into the questions, Pete. First off, let's go off with Ryan saying, I'm following a lot of Barber for DraftKings. Who's your guys' other dogs you like? I will tell you, you know who kept really coming up for me, and I mean, he's not necessarily really an underdog here, but it's that 82,000 fight. I was getting a lot of Gabe Green.
Yeah, I mean, I made that fight a special fight that I wanted to target. I don't really care which side I get. I mean, they are separated by $200, so obviously you're going to get more of Gabe Green coming in at 8,000 flat. But I do think it's a nice spot. Both guys have 100% finish rate. Both guys like to strike. We have seen them, get wobbled and taken out in the past on the regional scene. You had, Phil Rowe have to overcome some adversity in the Contender Series. So I do like the narrative that, Gabe Green could go in there and hurt Phil Rowe. But, I like Phil Rowe a lot. I think that he's a long guy, 6'3", 80 inches. I'm leaning Rowe, but I do have plenty of Gabe Green, and it's not a bad call by any means. I'm getting a lot of Maycee Barber as well. We talked about it. I think that she was heralded as a very special talent within the division. I do think that this is a winnable fight. It's not an easy fight, and you're banking on her, overcoming that ACL injury, getting right back in there and kind of picking up where she left off. So if she's not 100%, then maybe Alexa Grasso's in an underrated position at 8,300. But as far as an underdog, I do like Maycee Barber quite a bit, and I'm okay with getting her in my lineups.
Got to also mention about Brian Kelleher was coming up a ton for me, whether we're talking DraftKings or FanDuel. Mm-hmm. If Ricky Simone does go the takedown route, I do like him more over on FanDuel than I look DraftKings. But, you talked about this Thursday on the strategy show about the one thing about Brian Kelleher. When Ricky Simone is potentially going for those takedowns, he has got to be on the lookout for a guillotine.
Yeah, I actually had, it seems like every night before these slates, I have like weird dreams, and sometimes they come to fruition, sometimes they don't. But I actually saw Ricky Simone get caught in a guillotine, and I think that's kind of like in the back of everybody's mind, like, Ricky Simone's going to shoot in for a double leg because he can get wobbled on the feet. We have seen him wobbled and finished in the past on the regional scene. Then in the UFC, you did see Uriah Faber take advantage of an aggressive Ricky Simon, hit him with an overhand, wobbled him, and then, got a finish. So I will say that Brian Kelleher, I got a lot of Brian Kelleher in my crunches, and it's something I wasn't necessarily expecting. So then I kind of had to dig into the reasoning behind it. And I had to think of do I really want this much Brian Kelleher? Well, he does have pretty underrated pop in his hands. You remember how he was losing the fight against Hunter Azure and then put together some great combinations and knocked him out. He does have a beautiful guillotine choke, which is it's a good counter to a double leg takedown, which Ricky Simon probably will shoot 10 of them. Now, what happens if he does get a little fatigued? Does he leave his neck out there? So I do have plenty of Brian Kelleher, more than I thought. So as a guy in the 7K range or a fighter in the 7K range that can kind of explode with a performance, I do think Kelleher kind of fits that with an 82% finish rate, and I'm okay with getting to some of him.
I want to mention a question we got earlier today over in Slack, and it was related to the Maverick fight and about her, her takedown defense abilities. I know the person in chat was saying, hey, really having a tough time finding a lot of Amanda Maverick film. So, obviously you've been breaking down the film all week. What was your thoughts about her potentially, having to stop the takedown? Because obviously Julian Roberson is going to win this fight. It's her getting the fight to the ground.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very tough situation. It's tough to gauge the talent because you are comparing, regional footage to footage in the UFC. And sometimes there's a gap in that skill level. But I do think that Miranda Maverick, in comparison to other, women fighters, has had a decent road to the UFC. It's not like she's fighting a bunch of, just underwhelming talent. She has fought and tested herself against some good people. She has been taken down. And she has been controlled in the past, but she does scramble back to her feet well, and she does go for takedowns as well. So I really wouldn't be surprised if she's able to scramble out of some Roberson takedowns and get up from her back and then kind of turn the tide in reverse position and put Roberson there. It's a tricky fight. I mean, you do have a UFC veteran in Roberson, 6-3 overall in the UFC, in an underdog position. So if you kind of just want to weigh it based on UFC, my Roomba's talking to me. If you want to base it off of, UFC experience, then Roberson, who has 9 UFC fights in comparison to Miranda Maverick's 1, I think you could do worse than Roberson, but Maverick should be able to scramble decently in this position.
So we all know now where you're getting your DFS advice from.
Yeah, exactly. Every now and then it just
I did. There was a couple other questions I want to mention from Slack that we saw a little earlier. One of them was it was about someone who's a brand new player to Mma Dfs, and this was more of a fantasy cruncher type question about 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 unique fighters per lineup. When I go on the fantasy cruncher, my 2 immediate tools are 2 unique fighters per lineup and 20% randomness.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I was messing around and actually struggling with Fantasy Cruncher today because I was trying to spread out my exposure and trying to hit on every possible situation. And unless you're playing more than 150 lineups, it's pretty difficult and almost impossible to do so because, say you do have exposure to, let's say Polyana Biana, right? And she's only in 10% of your lineups. Well, you need to have those other winners and other optimal fighters in those 10%. So you're kind of chasing your tail in a situation like that. So for me, I do like to be a little bit bold. And if I mess around with the unique fighters, right? I say I had it set to just 1 unique fighter and I locked in Kamaru Usman, who I think is a very, very good fighter. I think he's in a smash spot, a little underpriced. And then I locked in Vieira. And I hit crunch. I could get almost 300 lineups with 1 unique player. I set that to 2 unique players, and I'm getting, a little bit under 150, 120 lineups. So if you're really trying to just narrow down on the field and not trying to just have 1 different fighter, totally agree that you can, manipulate that unique fighter build, and it can give you some different lineups. I just kind of remove some fighters that I think have virtually no shot, like Diego Lima. Anthony Hernandez, those are 2 guys that I really just, if they win, okay, well, So every dog has its day, and it can happen in an MMA fight, but I totally won't feel bad if that happens.
Yeah, I mean, I when I was doing my FanDuel crunches right before the show, the one thing that really just stuck out to me was Vieira was coming up in literally every lineup. It was him and Usman. It was the popular build between those two. By the way, speaking of Usman, Miles says any scenario where the winner of the main event is not optimal.
No, no, I don't think so. And I never really say that. I mean, I'm sure that there is, it's possible. I think it's not likely, though. I think it's very unlikely that that happens. I mean, if you think about what Kamaru Usman does, whether it's striking or via takedowns, you know, Gilbert Burns is a very talented fighter, very dangerous on the feet, very dangerous with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But most Jiu-Jitsu guys don't have the best takedown defense. I do think that Burns will be very, very strong and be able to defend takedowns early. But I do think that the accumulation of shots against the cage, similar to how Usman did it against Tyron Woodley, will start to leave openings for takedowns. And I do think Usman still goes the takedown route, even though Burns has, jiu-jitsu. I think that a good recipe, when you're fighting a Brazilian jiu-jitsu fighter is just incorporating ground and pound to disrupt their chaining of submission. So I think that, whatever happened in the practice room, whether Burns submitted Usman all the time, I think it's going to be different here when ground and pound's implemented.
I would love to know for our listeners how many people are actually playing on FanDuel, because I do not have a ton of FanDuel lineups today. I don't. It was not a lot of great contests over on FanDuel. I'm playing pretty much all on DraftKings today. Jacob says I really like Miranda Maverick on FanDuel. $17 seems like a great value.
I've been going back and forth with that fight, and how I tried to get different is I like to fade a certain fight. So I'm a little underweight on the first fight of the evening. I do think that Miranda Maverick was priced down a little bit. She'd be in a good spot. Obviously, she looks like she's a smash play because she has a first-round TKO over her previous opponent. But that was due to, doctor stoppage from a very nice elbow up the middle that split her opponent's nose. And replicating that, I mean, it could happen, but it's not like she completely knocked out her opponent, and that's something that can, a standard moving forward. I do think that standing up on the feet, she's going to outclass Roberson. I just see a decision here. I feel like, maybe I might not have this fight in many lineups, but I don't really foresee it exceeding 90 points. Do you?
Probably not. I mean, unless you get a first round finish. I mean, that's
right.
The only way. Ryan says, do we like Usman and Gaslin to win boost? I mean, I really like Usman in this spot. Gaslin, man, I know a lot of people over on our Slack channel are really pointing towards what Gaslin looked like on the scale yesterday. That's a fight that, and I forget who I was listening to earlier this week, and they were talking about Kelvin and said, you know what, this is going to be a fight where we're going to find out what is Kelvin made of. Is Kelvin still have that championship mindset that we saw 2 years ago, or are we going to see the Kelvin Gaslin that we have seen in his recent matchups?
Yeah, you hate to see a top talent decline, right? Like we've seen it all. Like we've seen guys that, think about last week with Frankie Edgar, completely different situation. Obviously, Frankie Edgar is a lot more weathered and a lot older than Kelvin Gastelum. But Kelvin Gastelum has been in some wars. And at a point, he was completely dominating competition. But if you think about who he's beaten them at the tail end of their career. Michael Bisping, Jacare Souza, like big names, but towards the end of their career. I know that Gastelum doesn't really look good on the scale. He's always been a fighter that struggled with weight cuts. And even at 185 pounds, he just always looks soft and underwhelming on the scale. So I mean, it's kind of like the standard for him. He's never going to blow you away when he steps on the scale. Heinisch looked awesome. Like he was in really, really great shape. But I do think that there is a skill difference here when it comes to striking. I do think that Heinisch has power. His knockout ability is live for a fighter that has been struggling on a 3-fight skid. So you could do worse than targeting a 7,400 fighter, fighting a guy who's in a rough patch right now. I don't know how far Gastelum has fallen. It's just I remember what power he has in his hands, his well-rounded skill set. I still think that the championship experience will kind of break through here. This is a big step up in competition for Ian Heinisch. I have some Ian Heinisch. But it's a fight like, I don't know. I don't know if I'm like smashing this fight from a DFS perspective.
Now, if you want to get access to all the great premium tools and content we have over at Awesemo.com, you got to sign up for an Awesemo Plus weekly pass for $29.95. It gives you access to some of the tools like ownership projections, player projections, our premium Slack channel, which me and Pete will be in after the show. And we do have a special promo going on for the Daytona 500, which is tomorrow. Get a NASCAR weekly pass for 50% off. That's $4.98 to get you ready for the NASCAR show. Of course, I was hosting a strategy show earlier on today. And by the way, for that Daytona 500 promo we got going on, the promo code is Daytona to get a NASCAR weekly pass for 50% off, just $4.98 for everything you need for tomorrow's Daytona 500. By the way, the Live Before Lock show for the Daytona 500 will be tomorrow at 1:30, as I'll be joined by Chris to get you ready for this one. So you see it right there over on the screen. Jordan's got it up there where you can sign up for an Awesemo Plus weekly pass there. Moving on to the next question. Miles says, top two 7,600 or less plays on DraftKings.
7,600 or less. Okay, so Polyana Viana against Mallory Martin, completely a low-level fight. Like, it's so low-level and so volatile that an armbar from guard, maybe a decision victory, I can see it happening. But, Polyana Viana has a 100% finish rate in her victories. So she's 11-4 overall, 2-3 in the UFC. Has been inconsistent. And, out of the two fights we've seen from Mallory Martin, she is a little inconsistent. You could do worse than Viana. I was getting a little too much on Fantasy Cruncher, so I kind of trimmed that down. I was like, Diego Lima, no thank you. Hernandez, that's a no thank you. Maki Pitolo is not a bad play. We talked about how that fight is an interesting one. He will have the volume edge if you are looking at the heat sheet. A 4.87 output to Marquez's 3.8 output. Both guys, Marquez has a 100% finish rate, whereas Pitolo has a 77% finish rate. I think Pitolo's not in a bad spot. You're fighting a guy who's coming off of 30 months, Jason, outside the cage, coming back from a big injury. You could do worse than that. I still have to say, Kelleher is a guy that can get finishes and he's sneaky. So, I don't hate Kelleher.
When I look at 7,600 and below, because look, I think when you look at this fight card top to bottom, I see a lot of potential decisions. Like when I look at fights that I look at as I believe, okay, these fights will be via stoppage. Pitolo Marquez, Vieira Hernandez, and then the other one, I had a third one. What was the third one? Oh, what was the third one? I think it might have been Simone and Kelleher.
Yeah.
But to me, this is a fight card that has a lot of decisions. So when I look at 7,600 and below, I'm like, who can get the finish? And to me, Pitolo and Kelleher are the two that stick out the most.
Yeah, so under 7,600, right? Kelleher, 82% finish rate. Viana, 100% finish rate. Pitolo, 77% finish rate. I think those are three to look at under that price range.
By the way, the prelims will start 6:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on ESPN Plus. I believe also on UFC Fight Pass as well before the TV prelims at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll move back on over to some of the other questions that are in there. By the way, if you're a premium member, you can put your question there in Slack. I will get to you right when I see it come in. Next up, top two DK favorites and fade DK captain. To me, the favorites have got to be Usman and Vieira would be the one. In terms of, look, Usman has a chance. He's a guy that can always break the slate just in terms of what he could potentially do, in that one. But if I was looking at, if I was looking to kind of go in another way to get away from Usman and Vieira in terms of like a captain type spot, I would look at someone like a Julian Marquez. And I would tell you this, this was more on FanDuel. I went with Marquez over Macy Barber as a captain. Just trying to make myself unique because I think the very popular build, whether we're talking about DK captain or we're talking about MVP or FanDuel, is going to be Usman and Vieira.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of what you said. I will say a guy that's kind of be a sneaky play, and it's based on his finish rate, is Bilal Muhammad, 29% finish rate, and you know that he's priced up at 9,200. I think that he's a nice leverage play here because, you think about people in that price range. You can already guarantee Usman's going to be more popular. You can already guarantee that Rodolfo Vieira is going to be more popular. People don't want to pay 9,200 for a guy that gets around 80 fantasy points. But against a guy in Diego Lima who can get taken down, can get outstruck, can get out-grappled, and can get just completely out-controlled, I think that, Muhammad's in an okay spot to shine. I mean, he has shown the ability to get submission victories, even TKOs. So I have some Bilal Muhammad. I think I put Usman in almost every lineup because I'm really, really confident. Gilbert Burns is an amazing fighter. I just think stylistically it's a very difficult fight. And then I tried to get the remaining lineups to either have Vieira or Bilal Muhammad. And I think like having two studs like that really gives you a nice shot at taking down the optimum.
We got some breaking news for you.
Oh, no.
How many lineups do you have that you need now fixed?
What?
Miranda Maverick versus Julian Roberson has been scratched per the UFC. Roberson has a non-COVID related illness and has withdrawn.
Can I be completely transparent? That affects me zero. I faded that fight completely out of my lineups. So
well, I have a lot of work to do when we get done with the show. I've got to make some changes.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. Well, that is a little aggravating, but it does in a way make things a little easier. Now, let's kind of look at that from a Miranda Maverick pivot standpoint, okay? You have an 8,500 price tag fighter. So you can already assume that a lot of people will probably take $200, find $200, and go to Julian Marquez, I would imagine, or somebody like a Phil Rowe, somebody who's within that price range. Now, with Robertson in the upper 7K range, I think you're going to see a pivot to Polyana Viana just because a lot of people think, women's MMA is very volatile. And, like flip a coin, that's who's going to win. It's possible. I will say that Viana's probably going to be one of the most popular plays on the slate now.
I would say that if you could have $200 more than Viana, I would spend the $200 more to get the Andre Ewell. I don't, and look, I do not have a lot of Chris Gutierrez. Yeah. I'm just looking at the potential of, when I look at those under 8,000, who are the fighters that I think have the highest chances of winning? And I'd put Andre Ewell in that category.
Yeah, man. Like, I like Andre Ewell. And okay, so let's kind of like explain why I like Andre Ewell. And we talked about it on a strategy show. It's not an easy fight for Chris Gutierrez. It's not an easy fight for Andre Ewell. They both have stylistic advantages and disadvantages in the bout. Andre Ewell, long southpaw, will have an 8-inch reach advantage. So when a fighter is fighting a lefty, that's a tricky scenario. And I know it sounds so silly, but it's very, very difficult to figure out if you've never trained or fought a lefty. Now, on top of that, you have Ewell with an 8-inch reach advantage. Literally, Gutierrez's path to victory is destroy that lead leg of Andre Ewell to hopefully chop down that tree with an accumulation of damage and work towards a TKO or a decisive decision. But Gutierrez is priced up at 8,400. So Andre Ewell, not a bad play at all.
Yeah, not a bad play at all. I'm looking to see if the UFC has announced, obviously the lock chimes will likely change now. We're probably looking at it looks like it's going to be a 7 p.m. lock time, if not later. Could be 7:30.
Okay. That's first fight of the night. I mean, if you went to your golden rule back in the day, you would have no shares of the first fight of the night.
And it's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true.
How Jason has changed over the years.
Look, it's still a golden rule for me. Don't get it wrong. Don't get it wrong. It's still a golden rule because more times than not, when I do have a lot of shares in the first fight, it comes back to screw me.
Yeah, I hear you. Jason, we got, almost 350 people watching us right now. If you guys could just do us a favor, hit that like button. Let's get up over 100 likes. We really appreciate it. Put your question in the YouTube chat or in our Slack channel, and we'll get right to you.
Yeah, we'll get into you. I'm just trying to see. I got the UFC statement on the fight being off. Just looking to see if they've announced a new start time for the fights. Once I have that, I'll put that information out there. But let's get back to the questions, because I know that's why you guys are here.
Now, just because that they have a different start time does not mean that DraftKings or FanDuel will accommodate to that start time unless they come out and say so. So be very careful with that. Don't think that lineup time is going to get pushed back. I would actually almost act like nothing has happened other than altering your lineups.
Yeah. Get your lineup in by 6:15 if they still have it set there. Andrew goes, thoughts on Bilal Muhammad and the MVP spot on FanDuel. I am locked and loaded. Look, I would say about that is going to help you separate yourself from the field. But Bilal Muhammad is a guy who tends to go 15 minutes. Yeah,
I mean, Bilal Muhammad via decision is like at minus money, is it not? I think that he is just a he goes the distance, and I'm sure that when you're notorious for just not finishing fights, each fight you want to go out there and work towards changing that. So I'm trying not to read into too much, because like if you try to predict finishes is so fluky, right? Like Diego Lima could get broken mentally after getting taken down and outstruck and literally quit on the stool, and next thing you know, now there's a finish. So try not to put too much weight in the finishing column.
And I know over in Slack, Woody has said DK has already changed the lock time to 7 p.m. And someone over in the YouTube chat also said that FanDuel has done the same thing. So, Pete, that's great news for me, man. It's great news for me. I've got 90 minutes after the show's over to get my lunch squared away. Come on.
Yeah, it's bad because there's not going to be too many dead lineups. And dead lineups will actually benefit us that are actually paying attention. There will still be some, but not as much as there should be.
Yeah. Mr. Bubbles says, you guys like Gutierrez. I don't like him in this spot because I think he's one of those guys that if he doesn't get a finish, the new DraftKings scoring system kills him.
Yeah. I think like as far as the fight in general, I'm excited for the fight because I'm a striker and I want to see it. I think that it's just such a nice matchup. You have a guy who's predominantly a boxer and Andre Ewell against a kicker. We talked about that. Now, if you're looking and analyzing that matchup, I will say that, Andre Ewell has fought the tougher competition in the UFC 100%. And, that's something that you can really think of. And Andre Ewell has a win over Chris Gutierrez as a teammate. And I think that his teammate's better than Chris Gutierrez. Chris Gutierrez isn't bad, but like he lost to Raoni Barcelos, then has 3 wins over Ryan McDonald, Geraldo de Freitas, Vince Morales, and then the draw to Cody Durden. Whereas if you go and dive into Andre Ewell's record, right, he debuted, beat Renan Barão, then fought Nathaniel Wood, who I have really, really high hopes for, Anderson Dos Santos, Marlon Vera, Jonathan Martinez was the teammate of Chris Gutierrez, who I think is better than Chris Gutierrez, and he has a split decision over him. He might not have won that fight, and then Aaron Rivera, but he's been in there with tougher competition, so I do like Andre Ewell in this underdog spot.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. We'll get into some other questions here. And this is a good one here from Myron asking about Usman and the additional of control time scoring for DraftKings.
I think like you're going to take – he's like a Giannis of this slate. He really is. Like at 9,000, I think he's completely mispriced. You take a guy who has volume, activity in all areas of the fight, and then – has been posting some massive numbers. And now you add control time on top of that. He should be 9,500, in my opinion. He's the champ. You have to put respect on the champ's name, despite it being against a very, very tough challenger in Gilbert Burns. I think that he's in a very good spot here.
And also, I mean, I think that, and look, no disrespect to the coaches down at Sanford MMA, but I view Trevor Whitman as a better coach. And now that, this is now the second camp that Kamaru Usman has had under Trevor Whitman, I think we're going to see what can Trevor Whitman do. I mean, there was a clip of an interview that Usman did this week, and my view of it was essentially him saying, I believe the Sanford MMA coaches took me as far as I could go. I think the other side of it is, I think he wanted to go to a gym where, let's just say it wasn't go balls to the wall in sparring.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I agree with that, because if I think that
I've heard some things.
But Justin Gaethje in general, I think is gonna, it's gonna be the same.
No, but there's things you hear that it basically says that it's hard sparring every day at Sanford.
Yeah, and I think what it is if you look at Henry Hooft, who's a specialist in kickboxing, but he's very basic. He's not going to make you do anything crazy or anything unorthodox. He's kind of jab, cross, kick, like very, very, very basic and fundamental. You think about the wrestling. Well, I think that Kamaru Usman feels like nobody can teach him more wrestling. So you need to find a mastermind. And I think that's what Trevor Whitman is. Remember when Coach Faraz Zahabi was like heralded as this big mastermind? I still think that he is. And, GSP is the reason because of that, is you want like an MMA strategist in your corner. And I don't really know if there was an MMA strategist a part of his previous camp. Plus, it's kind of weird, like training in the same camp as a guy that might be fighting, because that you might be fighting and now are fighting in Gilbert Burns. So here we are. I'm excited. I can't wait to see the fight. I hope at the end they're going to have some respect for one another. I'm sure they will. That's just how every fight goes.
Yeah, I mean, Rashad even had mentioned, I saw a comment that he made about, because obviously he's been in this situation when he fought John Jones, and he said, if you get to that point that you can land that one final shot to end your friend's night, can you do it? That could alter their career. So that's something to think about there. Who's the MVP, Usman or Vieira? I think you got to go Usman, but Vieira's got a chance to win quickly.
Yeah, he has a chance to win quickly, but there are question marks surrounding Vieira. So, I mean, if today's a day he decides to be a striker or test his striking, he could lose to Anthony Hernandez, who needs to keep the fight on the feet. Now, you know how I always say that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys don't have the best takedowns? Well, I went back and I watched even more Rodolfo Vieira footage, because I'm like, man, I know I'm going to get some Anthony Hernandez questions. How are Rodolfo Vieira's takedowns? They're really not bad, Jason. They're actually pretty good. Like, he shoots a blast double like a traditional wrestler. He laces the leg, works in some nice trips. He changes his level a lot. I think the one thing you have to worry about is fatigue with so much muscle in his frame, and obviously being forced to stand up. But in a small cage, the likelihood of Rodolfo Vieira not getting his hands on you, I think, is pretty slim.
Okay, I've seen this question now come up multiple times, so we'll talk about it. With losing a fight, is stacking the main event more of a decision you got to make?
I'm not stacking today, and I'm not like against it. I get it if you want to try it out. Burns would have to win some rounds in order to make the stack viable. I don't know if I really see him winning some rounds. Like, Usman's kind of got like this GSP type of aura around him, where there always seems to be like some challengers step up and you might think that they're the guy, but I feel like Usman just puts it together so well that it doesn't matter. I mean, Burns at 7,200 needs to score better than other 7K options in a stack in order to work, needs to win some rounds, and needs to not be put on his back. It's a lot of needs right there. I don't know if he can really do it.
Of course, this is the MMA Live for Lock show right here on Awesemo.com. Be sure to give Awesemo a follow on Twitter, which is at Awesemo_com, as we're trying to reach 30,000 followers. And we do have a giveaway going on, as we are giving away 30 free weekly passes to one of our followers. So give us a follow right now at Awesemo_com. Also, be sure to follow the Awesemo MMA Twitter handle, which is at Awesemo MMA. Let's get over to the next questions. Of course, start lining those up over whether it's in Slack or on YouTube. Nason says, with everyone flocking to Usman and Vieira, do you think Ricky Simón is under-owned while Kelleher is a chalky punt play?
It's a great question. And I really thought about this, and I'm sitting there staring at my crunches all morning. I go out, I get my coffee, I come back, I sit in front of the computer and try to put, my thinking of how all our listeners are going to think and how everybody in the game is going to try to take down an optimal. And I was thinking like, okay, I really feel really confident in Kamaru Usman here. Now, when it comes to the other 9K options, you have Ricky Simon at 9,100, Bilal Muhammad at 9,200, and then Rodolfo Vieira at 9,300. Which of those 9K options is their opponent most likely to kind of pull the upset? And I would have to say that Brian Kelleher of, Diego Lima and Anthony Hernandez has the most legitimate shot to pull that upset. So, like, for me, he's going to be somewhat underowned because Kelleher is popular. But I can't play any Hernandez. I can't play any Lima. And you can't have Usman in all three of those other 9K options. So I kind of prioritized, and if I was ranking them, the 9K options, I'd go Usman, Vieira, Muhammad, Simone. And my worry with Simone is obviously getting caught in a guillotine or hit with a big shot. And, those chin issues kind of really introduce themselves once again.
I think Simone has a higher ceiling than Muhammad is, though.
100%. Yeah, 100%. It's just more of a matchup type of thing. Like, Simone has a higher ceiling and has really put forth more points in the past than, Bilal Muhammad. Not even close, right? Like, if you look at Simone's stats, he's averaging 7 takedowns per 15 minutes. That's absolutely wild. But in saying so, he has to be more selective with his takedowns. I do know that Cody Stamann had absolute success against Brian Kelleher, mixing it up, standing up, taking him down. I don't know. I just think like the other 9K spots are just like no question they're going to win.
Daniel comes off with a question on FanDuel. Muhammad and Marquez or Vieira and Gabe Green?
Muhammad and Marquez or Vieira and Gabe Green?
Obviously, I like the first part of that way more than I like the second part.
I will say Vieira and Gabe Green probably is more of a GPP with more upside than a Muhammad. Say it one more time.
It was, let me scroll it, Muhammad and Marquez. So Bilal Muhammad, Julian Marquez, or Vieira and Gabe Green.
Okay, so you have Muhammad, who's a decision guy, could break through and get a finish. You have Marquez returning from a 3-year layoff, expecting him to go out there and get a finish. Maybe we're kind of overestimating what he can do in his return fight. I do think that the Vieira, he should get a finish 100%. And, Gabe Green going up against Phil Rowe. Phil Rowe has been wobbled and rocked in a lot of his regional footage, even on the Contender Series. So I would actually say the second one with Vieira and Gabe Green. I like that one a little bit better.
Paul says 8,300 left on DraftKings. Grosso, Rowe, Green, or Barber?
I think you got to feel Grosso, Rowe, Green, Barber. So Grosso, for me, I'm not a big Grosso guy as much as I thought that I was going to be. It comes down to
low ownership on Grosso, though.
I think it's warranted, though. I will go with Macy Barber.
Someone asked if Jim Miller get a replacement fight. He'll not get a replacement fight for tonight, but look for him to fight in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Pete, who you got? Barber or Grosso?
Barber.
I like Barber in their one, but I think you can play the ownership game a little bit with Alexa Grosso if you got the money to spend there on DK at 8,300.
Yeah.
Let's see here. DraftKings GPP, Andre Ul or Alexa Grosso or someone else under them not named Brian Kelleher.
Okay, so you need somebody under 8,300. Why not go to Phil Rowe or Gabe Green? I think It depends on what type of thing you're in. What type of, contest you're in. If you're in a GPP, you have to be thinking about your fighter. Can they get you 90 points and above? Because that's how you're really going to cash. You need your fighter to get 90 points and above. If you're in a cash contest, Bilal Muhammad, Vieira, like Usman, like those guys are in positions that should be no-brainers that they get the victory.
We got over 400 people in here. Let's get those likes up to 150 here in the next couple minutes. Of course, be sure hit that subscribe and notification bell so you know when a new show is live here on the channel. Of course, we're going to be here for another 15 minutes to get you ready for tonight's UFC Live 4 Lock. And also, by the way, following us will be the NBA Deeper Dive show to get you ready for tonight's NBA action. Miles says, who do you prefer MVP on FanDuel, Marquez or Simone?
On FanDuel, Marquez or Simone? Marquez is 19, Simone is 20. I mean, if we look at what have you done for me lately, it's got to be Simone. And that's even with me saying all the good things about Kelleher. Comparing Simone to Marquez, I like Marquez. I think that it's a very winnable fight, whether it's via TKO or submission, but I like Simone in that situation.
Paul would like to get your take on the actual fight between Rowe and Green.
Yeah, so Phil Rowe, actually a student of one of my coaches that I met out in New Mexico. I had no idea until I saw my coach post a photo of him, training him. So that makes me like Phil Rowe even more. Like my striking coach when I was out in New Mexico, Crew Dom, phenomenal Muay Thai coach. He's in Daytona. I've talked to you about him. So I know that Phil Rowe is going to be very, very skilled in the striking department. Is surrounded by some good fighters as well, good training partners, Jacare Souza, even Rodolfo Vieira he trains with as well. So, he's around good talent. Gabe Green's a very tough guy, was, stepped up on short notice against Daniel Rodriguez, put on a good account of himself, and did not get knocked out or taken out in that fight when a lot of people thought he would. He just showed that he has a good chin. I just think he's going to be at a severe 7-inch reach disadvantage, massive height disadvantage, and also a speed disadvantage. So, Rowe's chin is always a liability, but I think the speed and length is something to really note here. And I think that on FanDuel, Rowe is priced as the underdog at $14. Something you could probably take advantage of over there. 8,200 on DraftKings. I think automatically Green's going to be a very popular play just because it's $2 less. And then when you're hurting for a 7K option, you just go up to the 8,000 Gabe Green.
By the way, mention about the breaking news of Julian Roberson being out. She wrote on her Instagram story saying, quote, "Heartbroken is the only way to describe it. After a great camp and an easy weight cut, I unfortunately woke up this morning at 4 a.m. vomiting, and my condition has yet to improve. Yikes. So for the first time in my career, my team has decided it would be best to pull myself from the fight. My greatest apologies to Miranda. I know how much you put into this, and it would be an honor to share the octagon with you in the future. I'm sorry to everyone I'm letting down, my team, my fans, and the UFC. I wish I could have performed for you tonight."
Yeah, it happens, Robertson. Don't be tough on yourself. You get sick. It's outside of your control. Injuries happen, sicknesses happen, illnesses happen. And even people kind of just break mentally. That happens too. And you get people that pull out of a fight. And but she hasn't shown me anything to not believe her. So hope she gets better. Hope she feels better. And I bet you we'll see Miranda Maverick with a fight within the next couple weeks as well.
Joshua over in our Slack says, who's our top sleeper pick today?
I think a top sleeper would have to be Kelleher, but I'm wondering how much of a sleeper that it is as a 7K guy. So I could say Andre Ewell is a pretty deep sleeper that I think a lot of people are just going to glance over.
Yeah, I was just looking at our ownership projections, and Andre Ewell is definitely the guy that I would pick in that spot. Pat wants to know if you're still on Kelvin Gaslin because he has Heinisch now.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't feel comfortable with it. I still think that Gaslin, has shown me so much in the octagon. 16 UFC fights, 10-6 overall. Heinisch is 3-2 overall. What have you done for me lately? Heinisch got a nice knockout win over Gerald Meerschaert before that, was in a hole as well. Now Gaslin's in a hole, and he's on a skid. So it's kind of two inconsistent fighters right now, but a guy who does have championship experience, I would foresee that he edges him out. Not a confident spot at all. I did increase some exposure to Heinisch because struggles are real, especially mentally. So you do wonder if there's something more than a physical mistake that's happening in these fights.
Of course, see it right there on the screen. MMA fighter projections are free on the site. And also, if you miss any of our shows, you got to check them out on the Awesemo Podcast Network. Just go to awesemo.com/podcast to find the links for your favorite podcasts that you're looking for. And leave a 5-star review on one of our podcasts for a chance to win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Good luck on that one. Another question over in Slack. Jay saying Martin and Rowe or Green and Gaslin on DraftKings.
God, man, Martin and Rowe. So Mallory Martin's a fighter that I don't want to roster, but I have some. And it's because she's only 2 fights in her UFC career. I wish that fight got scrapped, but it's here. I think the path to victory for Martin is to get takedowns and lay on top. I really do. So, okay, she's okay. I'd probably go with the Gaslin. I as much as I don't feel confident in that, I feel much more confident in the lineup with him.
By the way, our ownership projections for our premium members has been updated. Alex just ran that. So with Miranda, Maverick, and Julian Roberson off the car, you got to check that out as you're developing your lineups for this one. Another question in Slack asking, can you break down the Martin versus Viana fight for a DraftKings GPP?
Yeah, so Viana is a long, I'll say kickboxer because she utilizes some kicks and some hands. But off of her back, she's very aggressive. She does throw some heat on the feet, but off of her back, she looks for the finish. It's just like her wrestling's really not up to par. Mallory Martin, was dropped and nearly finished against Hannah Cifers, and they both have suffered defeats to Hannah Cifers. It's actually pretty funny. But Mallory Martin needs to get takedowns, needs to get top control, needs to avoid getting armbarred, needs to avoid getting submitted. Not a real good spot, but she did when she knew she was down around against Hannah Cifers, she really put the pedal to the metal and worked towards a finish. So 8,600, probably a fighter that a lot of people are glancing over, so she could be a leverage play.
CS appreciates you with the super chat. He says, would you play any stacked main event if Max entering the 555 DraftKings tournament, 7 entries in GPP? What percentage would you stack the main event, if at all?
Man, it's a great question. Thanks for hitting us up.
Okay. I will tell you this. So in a 20 lineup, I think I'm going to stack the main event in 2 lineups.
Yeah, so I would recommend, if you kind of just want to cover all bases, I would say no more than 1 out of 7 entries. I think that's fair. For me personally, I'm not stacking at all. If it's a back and forth type of real championship grind fight, that's when you see an underdog come through. I mean, the volume of burns, 3.15 strikes per minute, average takedown 2.21. He's not taking down Kamaru Usman. Let's be real. So he needs to get points via accumulation of strikes. So he needs to up his volume and do what he hasn't done against other top-level competition. So we'll see. I don't recommend stacking, Coach, but if you have to, do it in 1.
We got about 5 minutes here left in the show. Kind of do a little rapid fire here on this one. Try to get as much questions as we can. Who is your safer play, Marquez or Simone?
Marquez.
Interesting. That to me is a GPP fight between Marquez.
That guillotine is real, man.
Andy asks concerns about Marquez's ring rust.
Yes.
31 months, long time. Pete, someone wants to know where you got your hoodie at.
Kohl's.
Let's see here. Try to get some other ones in here.
I like these rapid fire. Let's get it.
Favorite 3 fights you think are likely to be in the optimal?
Main event. Marquez Patolo, Row Green.
Muhammad and Patolo or Gutierrez and Green FanDuel cash?
The first one.
Is a $13 Viana a good play?
You could do worse.
Simone or Muhammad straight up?
Muhammad.
By the way, yes, the Macy Barber fight is the co-main event. 3 favorite pay-up spots.
Usman, Vieira, Muhammad.
Sam and Slack goes, Martin and Grasso or rebuild.
Yeah. Rebuild.
Sometimes you just gotta say screw it, scratch. Let me just start all over.
Erase that whiteboard, bro.
Usman Vieira or Muhammad at captain?
Ooh. Usman Vieira. It's got to be Usman, man. You talk about 5 rounds, what he's shown. He averages 125.3 DraftKings points. You know, that's incredible.
Green or Ul, DraftKings GPP?
I will say Green just because that fight is going to be finished.
Green or Barber on DraftKings?
Barber.
How big of an upset would it be if Usman were to lose?
Pretty big.
Yeah, I would say so.
For championship fight, pretty big.
How many takedowns defended can Kelleher get?
It's going to need to defend at least 3. 1 round, at least.
3 favorite underdogs.
I'll go Barber, Kelleher, Ewell.
Matt, we do give our straight fight picks during the strategy show. Best MVP for cash.
Vieira or Usman.
Jordan over in Slack saying, do you like Poyana Viana at all? Sorry if I missed it.
She's okay. I mean, it's more of the fight than anything. Now you're narrowed down to 2 women's fights. Grasso, Barber, and Martin Viana does make things a little bit more interesting, and it's probably a more volatile fight.
How much shares do you have of Anthony Hernandez?
I told you 0. I didn't check them. I have 0 of him and 0 of Diego Lima. I didn't go crazy. If I did a 150, I would have limited it to 5%.
In terms of, I'll just give you some of my straight up picks. I'll go quickly through them. Usman, Barber. I'm gonna go Ian Heinisch with the upset. Marquez, Vieira, Muhammad, Mallory Martin, Simone, Green will be my straight up picks.
Okay. Not DFS related. I'll go Usman, Barber, Gaslin, Marquez, Vieira, Muhammad, Martin, Ewell, Simone, Rowe. Yeah.
Of course, myself and Pete, we're going to hop over into Slack to be there for, I guess, about the next 75 minutes to get you ready before lock there. Because I got to go into a little bit of grind mode here to get my lineups ready. But coming up next, we've got the NBA deeper dive to get you ready for tonight's NBA action. And, of course, following them will be NBA Live Before Lock. So that is going to do it for MMA Live Before Lock. Good luck to everyone. And we will be back next Thursday for the strategy show. Yeah, we're in this long stretch, Pete. We got shows for like the next 10 weeks. So we'll be here. But of course, coming up next is NBA Deeper Dive. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Be sure to hit that thumbs up button as you exit the show. Peace.